Welcome back to CPAC. I'm Ed Morrissey of HotAir.com at the Town Hall Media booth. Joining me right now is my friend Rob O'Donnell from BrothersBeforeOthers.org, former New York Police Department detective and activist now for police officers, causes with police officers, doing your best to support your fellow officers now that you are doing this type of thing. You're here, in fact, right after doing a benefit for somebody who committed suicide, unfortunately.
Yeah, we had a New Jersey police officer who ended up taking his own life a couple of weeks ago. And we did a benefit. Brothers Before Others organized it with the state PBA for his family, his wife and children. And to see the hindsight of it, to see permanent solutions for temporary problems is never the answer.
Right.
Police suicide is a growing epidemic in the police community, and it's not being tracked the way it should be tracked. There is no clearinghouse. Like as many faults as the VA has, they act as a very good clearinghouse for veterans and active duty military who commit suicide, where there is no such thing in the police department. Your active duty police officers are tracked, but retired police officers, say you're a rookie police officer and you see something very tragic, and you just say, hey, policing's not for me, I can't do this anymore. And 2 years later you end up killing yourself. No one's tracking that. So the numbers are far greater than we know. And we really need to, I would like to see the Department of Justice and someone of that matter, become a clearinghouse to track all police suicides, be it retired, active duty, separated from service for whatever reason, and track those to get a true number, because without the true number, we can't treat it the way we should.
And I have a couple thoughts about this. First off, I guess I'd ask you, are there local police departments that do a better job of this? I mean, are there some local police departments trying to do this, or is it really just slipping through everybody's fingers?
It's slipping through everybody's fingers. The police departments, are doing what they need to do. I mean, they're doing to show that they've done something, but just doing something is not the answer to this. We really have to reach out to police officers and show them there's an avenue. I mean, that stigma is starting to dwindle, where you're not vulnerable if you ask for help. You shouldn't be disciplined if you're asking for help. Your career shouldn't be ruined if you're asking for help. They're kind of getting away from that, but they're basically just doing window dressings on it rather than really helping with the problems.
And I think that people vastly underestimate what police officers go through. I've never been a police officer. I've never had to do any of this work. One of my favorite shows, though, was Homicide Hunter on Investigation Discovery. Lieutenant Joe Kenda. And his final episode, he talked about a case that disturbs him to this day, and it's a murder of a 5-year-old kid who was wearing the same kind of pajamas his own son had. He was about the same age at the time. And it was the case that basically he ended up walking away from, separating from service over. He'd done his 20 years and he got out. And he talks about the fact, I can't sleep at night, sleep regularly at night. All these things run through my head constantly. And his way of dealing with it was to do the television show and tell the stories to kind of get him out of his head. And it took him years to get past that. And I mean, he seems very well adjusted. It seems like a pretty normal kind of guy, but all of this is percolating in his head. And you multiply that by tens and tens of thousands of police officers, hundreds of thousands of police officers and detectives across the country. And that's when you start to realize there's a lot of people at risk here.
Yeah, there is. And those personal moments, which we don't like to talk about, I had my own personal moment. I was a homicide detective in New York City, where I pretty much saw everything. But there was one in particular where a child, the same age as my son, kind of looked like my son, was accidentally shot by a family member. And it was an accident. The firearm discharged. The child was in the next room and the bullet entered him. But after the fact, after going, as the detective, I had to go to the autopsy of this child. And when I left that, and it kind of chokes me up to this day, when I left that autopsy, it kind of dawned on me, this child was the same age as my son, looked like my son. And I basically sat in my car and cried for a half hour, uncontrollably.
Yeah.
Where there is no way, and if anyone tells you different, they're lying. You go through 20, 30 years of policing and come out normal. Yeah. You have seen too much. You have seen the best and worst in society. what most people put blinders on. You know, they pick and choose what they see and what they don't see. Where law enforcement, you don't have that choice. You're
Right.
seeing it, and how you deal with it is the problem. How you ask for help is what gets you through that. But there is no way you come out of the other end of a career in law enforcement the same as when you entered it. You're coming out a different person.
So tell us about brothersforothers.org first off, and how your group is trying to approach this, and how other people can help. Before we get to any other, this is too important. We'll get to the other stuff in a minute, but tell us about brothersforothers.org, what you're doing to work on this, and how other people can help with it.
Brothersbeforothers.org is a law enforcement support group for law enforcement. I mean, we get questioned for the name all the time. Well, Brothers for Others, that's pretty conceited or pretty self-centered. Well, no, show me any organization that doesn't take care of their own members.
Right.
The United Federation of Teachers, the International Brotherhood of Teamsters. We're Brothers Before Others. And then you says, well, brothers, that's kind of sexist. Well, you can't spell brothers without her in there. Right. And our membership is, a third women. Who are very active in our group. But we look at it as like if you're on an airplane. They instruct you to put your mask on before you help the people around you. We're doing that same thing. We're helping these police officers, their families, so they can have the tools to go out and better support their families, so they can support their communities. When they feel better that they're supported, they're going to serve their communities better, and that's what we do. We send flower arrangements to every line of duty death in the country to let the people we know. We've partnered with a forensic sketch artist from Philadelphia, Johnny Castro, who's a member of ours, who does unbelievable portraits of every line of duty death in the country, and we have them hand delivered through our membership to these families most of the time before the funeral even takes place, and you'll see those portraits next to the casket most oftentimes. Yeah. We've had them as far as Hawaii hand delivered, because we had a member who was happened to be going on vacation in Hawaii during the time that there was a funeral there, brought the portraits out with him and hand delivered them. To this day, they're getting care packages from members of the Hawaiian community thanking us from the mainland for supporting their officer in Hawaii.
Yeah, I mean, that's what's necessary here, because in large part, these things are slipping through our fingers. So that's part of what the advocacy is. Brothers for Others, brothersbeforothers.org, brothersbeforothers.org. All right, so you're going to be here speaking at CPAC, and you've got a panel coming up. Is that later today?
Friday at 5.
Friday at 5 o'clock. So tell us about the topic of the panel and how this fits in with your unique experience here.
Yeah, the panel is Because Trump, How the Left Justifies Violence.
Yep.
And they absolutely are justifying violence. The media is justifying violence for them by the coverage that they're giving them. You have progressive mayors in these cities hiring like-minded progressive police chiefs who are instituting progressive policies for these departments. And their fallback, and you'll see it every time, will be these mayors saying, well, I didn't order a stand-down order, because they're letting these mobsters, these thugs, take over a city, assault people, do whatever they want, wear helmets, carry bats, bring weapons to these gatherings. But they're just saying, well, I didn't give the stand. You didn't have to give a stand-down order because your policies have already done that. And the rank-and-file police officers who want to institute law and order are not being allowed to do so. They're being attacked by the public. They're being attacked by the media. They're being demonized by their own chain of command in the mayorship, where if they do go hands-on and they do cross those boundaries to go after these people who are outright just looking for violence, there'll be 100 stories on that, why the police were so aggressive. Why were the police wearing paramilitary clothing? Well, because they're having rocks and bottles thrown at them.
Right.
They need the tools to address these things, and we should be addressing them. And it won't be the time until journalists and a consortium of lawyers start bringing First Amendment lawsuits against these cities saying, you had 30 officers across the street from my journalist who was being assaulted. You did nothing. I want to depose each and every one of those cops under the guise of being in a deposition where they're not protected. The police officers are protected now. Hey, I had to tell the truth. I'm being deposed.
Right.
I wanted to help, but my policies and my chain of command is not allowing me to do such. Get that on the record. Let these lawsuits flourish. One of the greatest lawsuits I saw was in New York, where the Antifa shut down the West Side Highway. And there were certain individuals, they were shut down for a couple hours, sued the city of New York for unlawful imprisonment because the police in proper numbers was there, but you allowed them to shut down this highway, which there's no permit to protest and shouldn't be shutting down highways.
Right.
And I was trapped for 2 or 3 hours. I was unlawfully imprisoned. Then the city settled these lawsuits. So we need more of that. We need more of the public to go out, and the police need the support, so they can take that extra step, because again, they're being micromanaged from their chain of command from above. The media is micromanaging anything they do, and the public. We need the support from the public. We need the support from the chain of command to do the right thing and protect and serve these journalists and these everyday people for wearing a MAGA hat. For wearing a red T-shirt that's mistaken because you're pointed out by a group of thugs that are going to mob you simply because they don't like you're there. And we need to address that. Make no mistake, Antifa and these like organizations show up for violence. The police need to address that in the proper way, not stand down, not watch it happen, not let people like an Andy Ngo get assaulted and beat, on a regular basis, where it's just tragic. And seeing that from a law enforcement perspective is disheartening.
Well, in part because the men and women who go into law enforcement are there to keep order. That's their mission. That's what they want to do. They want to help people. They want to serve their community, and they want to keep order so that people can actually lawfully protest, right? Lawfully gather, assemble for whatever political purposes, but in a lawful way, and in a way that doesn't harm anybody. When we don't enforce those laws, it's not just the violence that's taking place on that street that day. It's that those are intimidation tactics to keep other people out of the public square. And that, I think, is the long-term risk that we are running here.
And you're emboldening it to happen more and in more places, more often in there and more places. It's been proven that these instigators are going from city to city to instigate this. And once you get a naive mob that has progressive tendencies, to get someone to direct them, they're following suit. We need to start making intel booklets on this. When I was in narcotics, we filled out 30-page booklets on everyone we arrested to determine who was trafficking drugs, who was moving drugs, who was selling drugs, who was buying drugs, so we could put the patterns together once it was all computerized. We need to be doing that with Antifa when we arrest them. Fill out these intel booklets, know who they are, where they're coming from, how they're supported, what's funding them to get to these places, and what weapons they're bringing. And if I had a rally in my city and there was another rally in another city and this person was in Bolton or a group of people were in Bolton, and we know that there's going to be a future rally in another city, we'll send those intel booklets to this city and say, hey, these are potential threats you have coming to your community. They need to start looking at these people as the terrorist organization they are. They're looking for violence in our streets. They're shutting down our constitutional rights of our First Amendments.
They're using They're using the threat of violence to deny other Americans their civil rights.
Yes,
absolutely. That's the bottom line with these groups. And this is what you're going to be discussing at the panel tomorrow at 5 o'clock at CPAC. Well, this is great. I'm going to let you get back to it then, Rob. Great talking with you again, Rob O'Donnell. BrothersBeforeOthers.org, BrothersBeforeOthers.org. You can contribute. Go to the website, find out how. I'm Ed Morrissey from HotAir.com here at the Town Hall Media booth at CPAC. We'll be back later with more.